Hello, Feely humans. Welcome to another episode of You Me Empathy. How are ya? How are you feeling? My name is Known Wells. I am the creator of this show. I'm also the founder of the Feely Human Collective, where we grow our empathy and vulnerability and capacity for emotional curiosity. We have big feelings. We're soft. We're sensitive. We lead with our hearts. We're activists and advocates and explorers. And we have big, soft, mushy hearts, as I know you do. So thank you for being here. Today's episode is 250. Episode 250. I feel like that's a milestone. I don't know. That's a quarter of the way toward 1,000 episodes. I don't think I'm going to reach 1,000 episodes, but maybe. You never know. The future is a mystery. And so today on the show, I speak with Kaitlin Ugolik Phillips. Kaitlin and I talk about encouraging our kids to recognize emotions, protecting our hearts while practicing empathy, our embarrassing live journal days. Anyone remember live journal? Yeah, we talk about that a little bit. And Caitlin's wonderful book, The Future of Feeling, Building Empathy in a Tech-Obsessed World. So we talk a lot today about empathy in the days of social media. We also talk about just the importance of boundaries and self-awareness when it comes to our empathy and all sorts of other things. Really enjoyed this conversation. Definitely check out Caitlin's book. It's called The Future of Feeling, Building Empathy in a Tech-Obsessed World. That you can find that wherever books are sold. And the link to that and Caitlin's website is in the show notes at feelyhuman.co. Before we get to the episode, just as a reminder, a free and easy way to support this podcast is to leave a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Please do that if you haven't yet. That would be great. Another way, fantastic way, beautiful way, connective way to support me and the work I do and the Feely Human community is to join our membership community. You can learn more about it at feelyhuman.co/membership. But essentially what it is, it's a private, paid or non-paid, there's a free tier as well, membership community where we have monthly expert workshops and a Feely movie club and a bi-monthly emotional check-in series and weekly events and just beautiful, vulnerable and courageous and supportive and uplifting environment to be more of who you are as a Feely human. So I would love to have you join us. You can learn more about that at feelyhuman.co/membership. And let's get to the episode. This is episode 250 on building empathy in a tech-obsessed world with Kaitlin Ugolik Phillips. Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, the official podcast of the Feely Human Collective. On this show, we explore the struggles, the triumphs, the brights and the darks we face as humans trying to be human on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. You, Me, Empathy was created so that we can be witness to our collective humanity through the lens of empathy, vulnerability, and emotional curiosity. We aim to destigmatize mental health, lead fiercely with our hearts, feel our feelings without shame and judgment, and share our courageous stories so that others may feel less alone and more connected as Feely humans. You, Me, Empathy is a brave place designed to inspire the beauty in each of us, because each of us, in all of our kaleidoscopic parts, makes up a magical whole that deserves to be seen. Today, I'm building empathy in a pandemic, indoor plants-obsessed world because I'm here with health policy writer, editor, and the author of The Future of Feeling, Building Empathy in a Tech-Obsessed World, It's Kaitlin Ugolik Phillips. Hello, Kaitlin.
Hello, it's so nice to be here.
Oh my gosh, so happy to have you here. Um, as you can see, the listeners can't see, but just so many indoor plants. The past 2 years, Jessica has gone off the rails with the plants. Now it's become a thing where I sometimes have dreams, let's call them nightmares, where the plants are attacking me in my sleep because they're literally all around us. Do you relate?
Maybe you're getting a little too much oxygen.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's why I have the headaches. Too much oxygen, a little too much
I
nature.
I went in a little bit on the indoor plants. I didn't really have any before the pandemic, and I needed a little more life in the home. But we still only have four, and I'm very proud to be keeping just those alive. So
That's great. That's great. It's hard. It's
yeah.
hard work. Yeah. We've got, I think, close to 60 inside our 720 square foot home. Uh, I don't know how she does it, keeps them all alive. Some of them look like they're thriving. I feel like they're all doing fairly well. So I
The
don't
ones
know.
I can see look great. We also have a cat who likes to get into things though, so we have to limit ourselves to the non-toxic plants. So
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Cats, curious cats. Cats are curious. Get into stuff. And they can climb, unlike our dogs. So, yeah, I
well,
understand
this
that.
one is 13 years old, so she's a little bit lazy, which helps.
Hmm. What's her name?
Her name is Lily. She was
Mhm.
I got her when she was just a little baby, and she moved with me to New York for grad school, and
Hmm.
then to Brooklyn, and then back to North Carolina where we live now. And she's been with me through all my growing up years. So
That's lovely. I have a question about Lily, but let's first kick off with an emotional check-in. How are you feeling today?
what counts as an emotion? If we're talking about the core emotions or the feelings wheel,
Hmm.
I'm feeling stressed
Mm.
today. To be honest, lots of work things going on, and I will be solo parenting for the next few days because my husband's out of town for work. So a little bit stressed, but sometimes a little bit of stress can be a good thing. So I'm trying to look at it that way.
Mm.
How
Hmm.
about yourself?
Uh, yeah, one pause on that. Solo parenting, that's hard. And you have a young one, right?
Yes, she is tomorrow. Tomorrow she'll be 19 months old.
Wow.
And yeah, my husband just has to go away for work for a few days, and it's always an adventure. Like I always am so grateful to have a parenting partner
Hmm.
when he comes back.
Yeah. Um, have you had many moments where you've had to do the solo gig?
A couple.
Yeah,
Not too many. And we have family close by. My sister usually comes over to help a little,
that's nice.
so that is really nice. Yeah, we have a
That
good
is nice.
village.
So we don't have kids, Jessica and I, but we have two rescue doggies, and one of them is a puppy. And I do a lot of solo parenting nowadays because Jessica is getting her doctorate and very, very busy, also teaching full time. And I think about and I wonder from you for this, like I think about like what are the things that like what are the sort of like little structures I can put in place throughout the day to help me like maintain my sanity and also give them boundaries and structures. Like, do you think about that when you're solo parenting?
Um, I think about it on the weekend because what I have that you might not have for a puppy is I have daycare. I
Yeah.
have childcare. We have daycare, and then we have our parents who help watch her. So that helps.
Mm,
But yeah, there are morning and evening structures and routines that help. But then on the weekend, it gets harder because you have to keep this little tiny person engaged. And um, when she was younger, it was keeping her safe and fed, right? But now it's keeping her engaged and occupied and not getting into everything, or only
yeah.
getting into the right things. So I'm still learning how to
Yeah.
how to do that. She's only 19 months old, and as a parent, I'm only 19 months old. So
I love that. That's a self-empathy moment.
yeah, I've been trying. Parenting so far has been just a long exercise in self empathy for me,
Mm.
among other things, but that has been a big part of it.
Yeah, it's your first time doing it. It's your first gig.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a balance between I have all the tools to do this, I know I can do it, and not being hard on myself when I kind of have moments of what is going on.
Yeah, good for you. I mean, I most of our friends have kids, and it does feel at times like, yeah, a little bit of like organized chaos. Like there is going to be chaotic elements, and that's just part of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's having one more person's needs and wants and interests to think about, and just like juggling logistics is really the hardest part of it. It's like that silent, unseen, some people call it emotional labor or invisible labor, or um yeah, that stuff is definitely the hardest to juggle. And then it makes other things, people told me that my priorities would change.
Mm.
I think that's definitely happened, but it's also that some things just like literally drop off the list just because there's not room for them, or your brain works a little differently.
Mm.
But like I said, I am very lucky to have a parenting partner, and we do a pretty good job of splitting all of those things, the physical and mental tasks. But we're
Hmm.
all figuring it out as we go along.
Yeah. That's the humaning. You mentioned like the silent or sort of invisible labor. Let's just make a call. Like let's sign a petition. No, like it's labor, period. Like it's not invisible, it's not silent.
Hmm.
Because I see that a lot in spaces like mental health, right? Like there's a lot of just stuff that's not talked about because there's stigma or there's taboo, or maybe there's misogyny as it pertains to a woman, like being a mom, right? And like the perspective culture has on like they have to be everything all at once and never complain, right? Like, can we just call it labor? And it's
Yeah,
hard.
it is. And I was just looking up, there's this great book that kind of lays all this out. It's called Fair Play, um,
Mm.
by Eve Rodsky. And it I mean, she also provides like all these resources. There's even like a card game for making things, the play more fair, I guess, in a partnership. But I do think, yeah, we're getting to where it's talked about a lot more, and people are naming it and realizing what it is. And yeah, so yeah, let's just call it what it is.
Call
life
it what it is.
life management, basically, home and
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. I love that. Well, you asked how I was doing, and I promised to get around to it. Uh, I'm doing like so this is not the show where I say I'm fine and we move on. So I will be real and just say I've been struggling. I've been vacillating between, some of the listeners know that I've been having chronic headache issues, and so I've been vacillating between hopelessness and the feeling that I know I need to take it one moment at a time. Right. Sort of like seeing that tomorrow could be different, the next hour could be different, etc. And then also feel like I have this, and maybe this is ego, but I have this, and I wonder if you can relate to this as a creator, as a writer, as someone who uses your noggin, um, and your heart. I when you have headaches, you don't feel like yourself. You feel
Mm.
like everything's a little bit askewed and off, and and then it feels like, oh, then I'm not like, I'm here talking to this new person and I'm not presenting my whole self because I'm like a little bit muted because of this headache. And that that makes me feel a little sad and griefy. The fact that like a part of me is a little bit muted because of this stupid fucking headache, and that makes me sad. Do you
Yeah,
relate to that?
I do. I think it's a common experience for people who have chronic pain, chronic illness.
Hmm.
Um, and then also, I mean, whenever I definitely relate to that feeling of whenever I've been sick or something hurts and it just feels, you just get this feeling that it's never, this is my new normal.
Hmm.
And am I ever going to get the whole me back? And, like, yeah, am I able, not feeling able to be fully present for things because of this other thing that you just want to scream about, but that it's not relevant always to the conversation, or like it's not. Yeah, I definitely can relate to that. I mean, I felt that way a lot of the time when I was pregnant.
Yeah, I
And
bet.
in this is a different kind of pain, but like in depression, in depressive periods,
Hmm.
um, there's definitely a sense of that. This is also a reason why I don't drink very much, because when I was, in my early 20s, I would drink and then have a hangover, and the hangover would make me feel like nothing would ever be good
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. This is my life now. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think those are all like different little stops on that road, right? That
Hmm.
are all kind of related, not exactly the same, but yeah, I can
Yeah.
definitely empathize with that feeling and that frustration for sure. But I think
Yeah.
like everything, sometimes it helps a little bit to know that probably most people can identify with that.
It does help, and thank you for that empathy. It does help, and I certainly do have the perspective of like, in the grand scheme of things, right? People have it worse, right? Like that's a perspective that's valid. Doesn't take away from the fact that yeah, I'm having pain, and I got to honor that pain. But I also know that I'm fairly able-bodied. I am able-bodied, and I'm also a white cis man, right? And like that's a immense privilege that I'm living with and presenting myself with, and it's all a tapestry, and it's a
Contain
tapestry that
multitude.
yeah, we contain multitudes. Exactly, exactly. So speaking of multitudes, I read somewhere that you had a live journal at some point. Let's talk about live journal, because I don't know if the listeners know about live journal, but I'm 41. I'm guessing you're in your 30s.
34.
34. Okay. LiveJournal was an online blogging platform in the early aughts.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Late 90s as
Probably
well?
I did
90s?
it. I'm not sure when it started, but I used it in like the early aughts, 2002 to 2005 or 6 probably.
Yeah. I was active live journaling in there as well. And I was trying to remember the name of it. I'll
Oh,
I'll
like
come
what you named yours?
what like my blog was called, and I think it was like something so pretentious, because at
Oh,
that
sure.
time I likened myself a romantic, and I was like heavily drinking and heavily writing. Like that's all I did was like drink and write and then work
So
like
it was
a
something
dozen
like
jobs.
Hemingway or Bukowski or something like that.
I mean, certainly I aspired to be Hemingway, because I was like, depression and all of that. And I was deeply alone and sad as well. And writing was a thing that sort of helped. But yeah, tell me about your live journal experience and what that meant to you.
Yeah, so I think I was much younger, not much younger, but I was like middle and high school when
How
I
dare you?
was when I was
You calling me old?
during those years. I was like, I say that to say that it was more of like a confessional thing for
Mm,
myself and my peers, because we were teenagers, like in our early teens, and it really was used, at least by me and my friends, as like a live diary,
mhm.
um, where we wrote about things that happened, but it wasn't like a blogging platform so much for us as literally just you're journaling with the knowledge that your friends are going to see it. Um,
Mhm.
And I could say so many things about that and how it's like the precursor to Instagram and so many other things. But
Yeah.
it's so interesting to be talking about this now because I actually just last week reconnected with a friend who I was very close with at that time, who
Okay.
I wrote about sometimes. And in the past, I have gone back and looked at some of those old posts and you might be happy that you can't remember what yours was called and you can't go back and
Oh,
read
believe me, I am. I am.
because sometimes one thing I will never forget is this was probably 10, 12 years ago. I was in a book club and we were also all writers and we brought things to a meeting once to read and I didn't have anything recent. So I read something from my live journal from high school and it was right after a breakup. And I what was truly such like a vulnerable, true, real expression of heartbreak and sadness at that time, I was able to then read it as a comedy piece because it was so funny to me, like the metaphors that I used and like the drama. And
Mm,
I feel so much. I mean, speaking of empathy, like because I've been going back to that place a little bit after reconnecting with this friend, I have so much empathy for the Kaitlin of that time. And
mm.
I I said things that are embarrassing and I wrote things that are embarrassing, but it's like, is it? I mean, it would be embarrassing for a 34-year-old me to say and do those things, but I have so much empathy for, in hindsight, where I was at that time in my life, figuring out who I was, what I believed, who I cared about, like,
Yeah.
um, and it's very wild that I did a lot of that in public, but so did my friends, and that public was much less public than what we have now with social media. So I think that's the thing
Hmm.
to remember if folks aren't familiar with LiveJournal. It was like, yeah, I'm broadcasting my feelings to the world, but the world is probably still only like people who know me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas now it's literally the world. So
Literally the world.
yeah.
I really love that you've had that moment where you can look back and give your past self some empathy. That's really powerful. And
Yeah.
it makes me feel like, I don't know, we should do a segment on this show where guests come and bring like a writing that they did, from high school or an old journal or an old diary and read it and then reflect.
Yeah, there was a documentary. I can't remember if it was The Moth or something else where people
Mhm.
did that on stage. And it was just, I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's hilarious and heartbreaking, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I um so when I was on LiveJournal, and I guess it was the early aughts, it was prior to meeting Jessica, and I met her in 2007. So, it was the years leading up to that, and even through a little bit of that, after as we met, and it was a lot of really emotional stuff, and it was a lot of like me talking about struggling with my mental health. Uh, and it was like a lot of like at that time, and this is really hard to admit, but I think what is such a crucial part of empathy is allowing ourselves to change and
Mm-hmm.
be changed. And so I look at that time and I'm like, there's some stuff in there like politically, like I've changed massively. And it's embarrassing to think about that. And the empathy is like, I didn't know any better. These are the tools I had. This is my perspective. All of that sort of framing is super important part of empathy. So I'm curious about, you wrote this book, The Future of Feeling, which is about empathy in, the world of tech. But like I always say, and I wonder from you, like what your thoughts are on it, that we really need to have empathy for ourselves before we have empathy for others. Like how does that feel to you, that statement? Like, do you feel like that's true? Has it been true for you?
Well, first, I will say for the listener that I was nodding my head vigorously through everything you just said about letting yourself change and having empathy for that. It's a really good question. I don't think I've thought about it in that way specifically, but I could see how it's the way that people say about love, right? That you can't really love another person if you don't love yourself. And it sounds like a cliche, but um, I think I'm thinking of a couple different things. Like I'm thinking of how one reason that that would be true, that you would really need to do the exercise of empathizing with your current and past self um, as part of or in advance of trying to do that for other people is
Mm-hmm.
just like to maintain healthy boundaries with other people. I know that a lot of my struggles as a younger person had to do with just over empathizing and to the point of now I've been diagnosed with OCD, and as a teenager I was definitely compulsively worrying about people and
Mm-hmm.
thinking about like what I needed to do to help them, or the fact that I could do nothing and how hopeless that was. Um, and that doesn't help me or the other person.
Yeah.
And I think in the context of even like a mentally healthy person, when you and this gets to a lot of the issues with social media and kind of information overload. We're exposed now to a lot more stories and a lot more situations that trigger empathy in us. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's important to be able to know like where the line is between feeling for another person, um, putting yourself in their shoes, taking their perspective, like where the line is between that, which is what I see as empathy, and like over identifying with someone else,
Mm-hmm.
um, or feeling responsible for someone else's feelings,
Mm-hmm.
which is, you know, not healthy. But we don't learn this really. Like at least I didn't, and like a lot of people I know didn't really learn this. You kind of learn like you're good or you're bad, you care or you don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Um
Binaries.
exactly, binaries. And I think that this is a really long answer to your question of about having empathy for yourself, but that's where I think it would be most important, is that like you have to it's important to take other people's perspectives so that you can, understand how you're the same and different, but you also need to protect your own heart.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect answer. Long and perfect.
Thank you.
And I would only just replace the but with and.
Mm,
So a huge, like I say it all the time, empathy without boundaries is just a form of self-immolation, right?
yeah.
And boundaries in and of itself are self-awareness, right? It's because our boundaries are going to be uniquely ours. Like what is my tipping point? Like what can I hold? What can I not hold? What are my triggers? All of that stuff is wrapped up in boundaries. And that's being cognizant of our history, our experiences, our own self, right? Our own hearts, right? And that I feel is where the self empathy comes into play. Is like a big piece of it is self awareness. Like
Yeah.
how can I like truly have empathy for myself without knowing myself, right?
Hmm.
Without like knowing who I am, what fills me up, what doesn't, what I like, what I don't like, right? That's all piece of it. And doing that work is going to help us create uh, better boundaries. And it's also going to help us be more useful in our empathy.
I think that's right. And I think that's part of why our current technology situation, especially social technology, is so concerning, because in these environments of endless scrolling and the need to like always be contributing to the content and responding to the content, it doesn't leave space for that. And it doesn't, it's really easy, I think, to get sucked in to just kind of automatic responses and automatic sharing and automatic like I see a lot of the time when there are these like quote unquote like flame wars or something on Twitter, for example, or even on TikTok, where people are accusing each other of things and arguing about things and trying to get points across. I see so often that like there's so much of that that maybe should be like a diary post or something you're working on with yourself or with a therapist or something else, you know.
Fair.
And like we don't, I think the culture that we currently have doesn't encourage us to like slow down enough to consider that. Like, is this something I need to type and respond? Is this really coming from my values and my self-confidence and self-awareness? Or am I having a knee-jerk reaction? Is this a feeling or a fact? You know, I think that, yeah, just like in the swirl of everything constantly updating all the time and there always being something new to respond to, I think you kind of lose the opportunity for some of that self-empathy, which then it just creates like a vicious cycle.
Yeah, that's really well said. It's incessant. And I think like empathy inward or empathy outward, I think requires a level of stillness, softness, curiosity, taking a pause, right?
Exactly.
I think someone, Liz Kleinrock of Teach and Transform on Instagram, who I love and have had on the show, she posted something. It's like connection before correction.
Yes.
And I was like, yes, I love that.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, there's the mechanism of social media is vicious, and it requires, and it makes us feel like we have to like constantly being added to it, because, and I've like, you know, I've been coming to this realization for years, because it just like, you know, the algorithm like is set up to make us do that, and then we share something that we feel like is valuable, and then no one sees it because, you know, we should be paying meta money, right? The metaverse money or whatever. And where I'm coming from, a place where like, yeah, I've done a lot of fucking work on myself and in mental health. And I want to share truly, deeply, vulnerably, to allow others in, to allow others to see that they're not alone, not as sympathy, not as a performance. And I see a lot of performance, and empathy is not a performance. Empathy is messy, and empathy can be uncomfortable, and empathy is the slowing down and not the sort of vicious rat race that we see in social media. And so for me personally, I'm slowly getting off of social media. I'm actually actively building out a membership community for Feely Human that I can own and that we can control, and that we could have that softness and slowing down, you know, that we all need. Yeah, it's a lot.
I love what you said, that empathy is not a performance, because I think that gets confused. It is such like a squishy concept. People will sometimes, you know, think that it is,
I like that.
it is, right?
It's not
like,
a checkbox either.
right.
Yeah.
It's not a checkbox. It's not a performance. It's not, it is a connection. And connection, can take a little bit of work. It's so interesting, like having a toddler and seeing those really like initial sparks of empathy.
Mm.
Because in my research, I learned that, from when we're babies, we kind of start with the neurological mechanisms of empathy, like the mirror neurons and things like that. The
Uh-huh.
smiling, the way babies smile so much when you smile, and um, but we were at the doctor for a checkup the other day, and there was a baby in another room crying. And my daughter just kind of stopped what she was doing and looked at the door, and she did the little like crying sign, like, and kind of looked sad. And that was the first time that I ever was like, she is recognizing an emotion in another
Wow.
human. How do I bottle this naturally?
Wow.
It's so natural. Um,
Yeah.
and encourage it and help it blossom, or I guess more so prevent it from being squashed by everything else in the world.
Mm.
But I think it's a good reminder that most of us have that ability and that innate desire to connect with other people on emotions and feelings, and um, we just need to
Yeah.
kind of like have the infrastructure that encourages that.
I love that. And that's really beautiful. I was getting goosebumps hearing you talk about your little girl. Yeah, it's what I think is important, and the infrastructure you're talking about, right, is safety.
Yeah,
Is like
exactly.
feeling safe and being seen and heard and loved and cherished. And it sounds like you're doing that,
Well, yeah,
right?
I'm
Like
like,
an
oh,
awareness of,
now I'm getting goosebumps. I'm like,
well,
oh,
and an
I'm
awareness of
feeling.
that, like an awareness of you being witness to your daughter, being witness to this moment of, oh, I've done that before, or oh, I recognize that emotion. So
Mhm.
powerful. Like that is a cascade of like wonder ahead, right? And
Yeah.
so you being witness to that, fostering that, like how to do that. Because you've lived a life and you've done a lot of work and empathy. You know how to do that.
Yeah, it's a cascade of wonder ahead, but it's also like a cascade of I'm seeing her and I'm like, she's recognizing an emotion. I'm recognizing that she's recognizing an emotion. You're now recognizing that in me. And I actually think this cycle is kind of what was the promise of some of the internet at the beginning of things like
Mm.
live journal and then other things
Hmm.
that eventually morphed into what we have. I think it was kind of part of the marketing. I don't think it's been the practice, but I think that possibility of sort of this like domino effect of empathy and connection is still possible, but maybe it has to happen on something like a Feely Human Network or something else, because I don't know that we can make
Yeah.
Meta do that at this.
Yeah. Meta. I agree. And I wonder from you, like, do you have any insights into why we are here? Like, why are we at this point being like, there was this promise, and now we're at this place in social media where like it's just this incessant, uh, you know, hellhole of vanity and performance. And it's not all of that. Like I don't want to, completely do away with it. We're not talking in binaries here, but it feels like that a lot of times. So do you have any opinions about like how it came to be that?
Sure, I have a lot of them. I think this is like very simplified, but I think if you look at like in the 90s, the bowling alone thing, the I can't remember who the author was, but this idea that we were becoming increasingly isolated, Americans especially like didn't have as many friends, people felt
Hmm.
alone, people don't have communities anymore. There's this gap, and then this shiny new thing comes and fills it with the promise of actually like replacing or being another way to have those connections. And then it does achieve that to a great degree.
Yeah.
But I think for one thing, and I write about this in the book, when most of the people who are creating a new infrastructure like that have the same, come from the same background or are similar in many ways, race, sex, ideology, interests, etc., they're not gonna, however hard they may have tried to empathize with future users of their products, if you don't have a representative sample of people that's creating things, no one is empathetic enough to predict how everyone is going to respond to a product or an experience, right? So I think part of what got us here is just kind of the homogeneity, I don't know if I pronounced that right, of the developers, the creators of these things. I think also, like, as someone who trained as a journalist and worked in media for a while, and I was trying to go into newspapers right when that became a thing that you didn't do anymore. Like, the media industry just pretended that the digital revolution wasn't happening and that a lot of the changes in advertising weren't happening and just ignored a lot of things. I think tech has done that too. Like, there are shiny, beautiful things and there are ways we know we can make money. So let's not worry about all this other stuff. But then all that other stuff turned out to be like, I don't know, now it's impacting politics on a global scale, climate change, public health, all these things. I just, like, I used to think that all this stuff just crept up on people like Mark Zuckerberg, who could never have imagined. And I do obviously still have empathy for, like, him and other individuals, but I don't really buy anymore that there was, this all happened to the big tech players. There were a lot of missed opportunities for empathy and diversity and inclusion and care throughout the process. And that was what led me to write the book. And then which ends on what I think is a relatively hopeful note of, there are people, especially younger people, who recognize all of this and are trying to find a way for us to, like, live with technology in a more empathetic way. And even, like, the platform that you're talking about working on is exactly the kind of thing I would have included in the book, because I don't want us, like you said, I don't want to talk in binaries. I don't want us to throw it all away. And I don't think we can.
Yeah.
But I also think continuing to pretend that, like, this is just the way we live and it's going to be that way is not sustainable.
That's it. Like, that is the key, right? Like, what I hear in a lot of what you're saying is this very human thing we do. We get in a thing and then we say, and we were just talking about it with my headaches, right? We get in a thing, we're like, this is it now. We've always done it this way. This is what it is. And what is crucial about empathy is perspective, right? Is understanding that other people have different ideas, that you're not right. There's no righteousness in empathy, right? It's understanding that truly what I know today could be different tomorrow, because I could have an experience with a person or just a general experience that could change my mind. And that, to the structures that be, let's just call them white men, is scary and dangerous, right? The systems at play, the homogeneity. I can't say it. You said it very well. I can't say it. That is disruptive, and empathy is disruptive. It demands of us understanding that we have intent and impact on the world. It demands of us that we dismantle, right? Because getting in our bubbles, creating Twitter, creating Instagram, and we get it, and it just keeps building, we lose perspective.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We're in our bubble. We're in our framework. The walls are too high. We can't see outside.
I think that's a great way to put it, is that in what I do think was a well-intentioned search by many people, myself included, for more perspective by joining these platforms, we end up losing it because we create bubbles, like you're saying. I think when you talk about how empathy is disruptive, especially for people who kind of represent the status quo, I think part of that is because, to circle back, you need safety to feel empathy. And we don't have, a lot of people don't have that safety. Even people who might have financial safety or, historically racial safety, whatever, like the emotional safety has not been like a very highly prioritized thing in our culture. Vulnerability, men like you having a podcast like this, I do think that's changing, right? I see a lot of situations where men are opening up avenues to talk to each other about feelings and emotions and experiences in ways that are different. And, people who are like our age who have kids are trying to teach their kids, boys, girls, whatever, that it is safe to feel and to care about things. And some people think there's an overcorrection, and then, that's fair in some ways, surely. But I think that's part of that equation, is part of how we got here, is that fear that people feel when they are challenged or disrupt or asked to have empathy is a lack of safety. And then it's a feedback loop, right? You have to have empathy to create that safety for other people, and then vice versa. And there are lots of individual situations I'm always careful to say where, like, I'm never advocating for someone to like go talk to a person who genuinely wishes them ill and show that, like, that's never what I'm talking about. But at the system scale, I think, we've identified some of the problems, but I don't know that we are the ones who have the resources to really to wave a magic wand and fix them, but we're doing our part, right? We're trying.
I mean, I get overwhelmed daily thinking about it, and I think we are trying, and I think we are doing wonderful work. I have to believe that. Right. And I tell myself all the time, it's one heart at a time. That's all I can do. Like I think, and I've mentioned this before, but I think it was Michelle Obama saying something along those lines, like change happens in small moments, not in these big romantic gestures that like society really cherishes and loves, and movies we love, and all that stuff. But it's really like the small moments.
Right. And you're not going to find a lot of small moments in a Twitter thread or comment section. Not to say that they're not beneficial in any way, but one thing that really busted my mind open about a lot of this was How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell.
I've heard of the book. I haven't read it. I've heard it's great.
Highly, highly, highly recommend, because especially on that point of small moments, quietness, boredom, pauses, it seems obvious, but it's really not.
I think about that, like, even with, like, I follow the Nap Ministry on Instagram.
Yes. Yeah, I'm familiar.
And I think about that with like parents too. I think about for yourself, right? Like, I think about my sister Claire, who has two, beautiful kiddos, and it feels like they're constantly busy, just like activity upon activity upon activity. And that's not a criticism, but I do wonder sometimes if like that's creating a pattern that like, oh, I have to be busy, and this is the value, and this is my life, this is my identity. Whereas like there is so much, and related to empathy and related to care,
and creativity
and curiosity,
mental health,
is in the slowing down, is into like, go be bored by yourself for an hour, right? And I had a lot of that growing up because my parents weren't around at times, and I just was off in the woods, just exploring, and that was very beneficial. So I think about that too, in ways people are raising their kids today.
There's a Gen Zer whose name I can't remember right now, but she helped found this organization I think it's just called log off. It's like the log off movement.
Okay.
And this is why I talk about being hopeful for the future, because these younger people who are like in their teens and early 20s recognize that all of this is not sustainable. And she talks about that, how she was never bored when she was a kid. And she resents that, and she wishes that she had had the opportunity to do weird things that her mom tells her she did, because she was bored and nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And she's coming up with all these strategies and um, discussion points and stuff for fellow Gen Z and younger about the importance of logging off. So
I love that.
yeah, you should talk to
Yeah.
her. I'll find her name.
Yeah, I would love that. I would really love that. Maybe Whitney Houston was right that children are our future.
Yeah. That's also just math, but yeah.
Fair point. It is also just math. I know that's so funny. I love that. I like, in all seriousness, I am very hopeful about it too, because I do see, just from like a mental health advocacy and awareness perspective, kids being open about their mental health, right? Like, whereas like when I was a kid, I'm locking that shit down. I am weird and I am alone and I'm going to struggle through this because no
Think
one
about
can
our
care or
parents
understand. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
and their parents. Like, that's why I'm like, I see, and I have to see it, right? Like you said, you have to believe you're doing something worthwhile. Like, I have a kid, so I have to believe that she's going to be.
The future is going to be brighter
Yeah.
for her. Yeah. Well, I'm feeling good about the world because I've spoken with you, Kaitlin.
That's wonderful. I feel that too. I feel a little more motivated and a little less stressed out. So I don't know if
Good.
it's the plants I can see behind you or the conversation or mix of the two.
Maybe a mix of the two. Maybe a mix of the
Yeah.
two.
No, thank you. This is genuinely a really good, um, affirming conversation.
Glad to hear it. Well, we always wrap up the show talking about our empathy heroes. So,
Mm.
authors we love, people in our lives, movie characters, characters from books we love. I will go first to give you a
Okay,
moment
yeah,
to
I gotta
reflect.
think about it for a second.
So, my empathy hero this week is James Baldwin, the writer, who had a birthday this month as we're recording this in August of 2022. And I think I've mentioned this quote before, but I just love it. And it's one of my favorite quotes of all time. So I'm going to read it again right into your ear holes. James Baldwin says, "You think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, but then you read. It was books that taught me that the things that tormented me most were the very things that connected me with all the people who were alive, who had ever been alive."
I feel like I could take a year to decide this, but I am going to go with a person whose quote I have on my mirror, and I look at it every day. And I don't actually even know if she really said this, but someone told me she did, so you might want to fact check. Jane Goodall has had a quote allegedly that was, "What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make."
Mm.
And you know, I also think that her work involves a lot of different things, but a piece of it is, what's our distance from animals? What's the real difference? Um, there's a lot of mirroring there,
A lot of empathy.
on empathy. And, but I also just think that quote is so powerful and a reminder that everything you do has an impact, but you have control over what that impact might be. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that a lot. Jane Goodall is a great empathy hero, who I don't know if has been mentioned on this show. So good for you. And we're in the, I don't know, 240 episodes at this point. So
There might be a good reason for that I'm not aware of. Hopefully not. Hopefully she.
it was revealed to be said by someone else entirely. I'm just kidding. I think it's a great quote, and we're just going to call it a fact on this show.
Okay, great.
This is the number one facts-based podcast. So
Love it.
well, Kaitlin, where can the Feely humans out there connect with you, read your book, all of that joyful stuff?
Yeah, you can find everything on my website, which is KaitlinUgolik.com. And I will spell that real quick. KaitlinUgolik.com. And that's also where I am on Twitter, which I am on sometimes still. And yeah, I'd love to hear from folks.
Wonderful, but not but. I don't know why I said but. The link to Kaitlin's website will be in the show notes for this episode at feelyhuman.co. Kaitlin, what a delight. Thank you for being empathetic. Thank you for putting out good work in the world and making an impact.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And to you listeners, as I always say, I'm here, you're here, we're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring pale blue dot. We have each other. It's you, me, empathy.